the chat. Tell or ask me anything at all in the chat. Today is December 12th, 2025. Well, actually the 13th. Jules says, hi Don. Hello, Jules. Chunky Sweat says first. On my screen, Jules is first. Julia Rose says, hello, Don. Hello, Julia Rose. Mr. Beetle says, who'd win in a battle, Marvel or DC? It depends on the writer. Aim Benitez says, hi, Don. Hello, Aim. Tin says, what kind of Hispanic are you? I don't know. What are the options? Abby says, do you remember me from that one time? No, I don't. Sorry. Brizzy Bree says, hey. Hello, Brizzy Bree. Tell or ask me anything at all in the chat. 530 says pencil emoji. Pencil emoji. Jules says 6, 7, or 41. If I had to choose a random number, 41. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Mantis says, hair looking really tall today, broski. Yeah, it is kind of puffy today, I guess. Abby says, oh, it was a long time ago. I think it was too long ago. I'm just really good at remembering. It's hard for me to remember because I read so many things, so it's like impossible for me to remember you. Stargazer says it's 42. What? Jules says my percentage is at 41. Okay, so when you gave me the option of choose this number or this number, I chose the right number then, apparently. Mr. Beetle says, why did you create this YouTube channel? Well, why am I streaming? Because it's interesting, entertaining. Mantis says, what's with the number 2 pencil, and is it Ticonderoga? It is Ticonderoga, yeah. Abby says, choose 365 or 678. 365. Jules says, yeah, I guess. I like 41 more than 67. Yeah, me too. Tell or ask me anything in the chat. BN says, what the hell is going on? I don't know. Abby says, amazing. Okay. Tin says, that 6-7. What? Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Abby says, AFK, my dog is meowing. Your dog is having some kind of problem? Okay. MSOA says, is that your live stream shirt? No, I wear it, not like in daily life, not just live streaming. Harold says, anything. Tell or ask me anything, ha ha ha. BN says, fuck 6-7, that's honestly annoying. You think it's annoying, that meme? Okay. Chunky says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love Chunky Sweats? I mean, I don't know you in real life, so I guess 1. Stargazer says, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, 42, answer to the ultimate question. Yeah, I heard about that. 42 is the answer. Yeah. Uncle says, hey Don, let's switch it up. Ask me something. What's something you're addicted to? MSOA says, how do I become as cool as you? I don't know. Abby says, okay, since it's fixed, no, it's broken again. Are you saying that your dog is having problems? Tell or ask me anything in the chat. Mr. Beetle says, what do you think happens after death? I think it's a mystery. Nobody can know. Mafu says, do you like spicy food? Yeah, I do. BN says, have you ever been to CC's Pizzeria? No, I haven't. Brandon says, hi Don, how are you? I'm happy to be here. I'm glad that you're happy. M. Soa says, have you been addicted to something bad? I've been addicted to the internet. I think that's bad. The Tennessee says, hi, how are you doing? Good. The Tennessee, thank you. Brizzy Breeze says, hi Brandon. You're saying hi to Brandon in the chat. Nice. Your Cozy says, hot dog water is healthy for you. What's hot dog water? Is that just slang for like dirty water? Mantis says, isn't your channel problematic considering your past internet addiction? I guess that's a good point. I guess it is. The Tennessee says hunting. What? Mr. Beetle says, do you think it's being a ghost or seeing a game over screen or hell or heaven? You're talking about death, what happens when we die. Like I said, I think it's unknowable. Nobody knows. David says, do you have a plan for the end of the world? Like if World War III broke out or a zombie apocalypse or something? No, I don't have a plan. I'm not a prepper. Heather says, who's in the room with you? I'm in this room alone. Johnny says, what's up, brother? I've been working, missed your recent lives. Good to see you again. Hello, Johnny. Your Cozy says, only CM Punk knows. What? M. Soa says, do you have many friends or loner? I have friends. The Tennessee says, hi, what is your favorite hobby? For me, video editing. Heather says, do you believe in ghosts? Not at all. Abby says, are you depressed and autistic like me? No. Mr. Morris says, I can't see the lamp tonight. What's your favorite TV show? I guess the TV show I've enjoyed the most watching is Breaking Bad. Joe says, I love you, Donnie B. Thank you. 4-star says, Daz Games. What? Shapressum says, hi. Hello, Shapressum. It's Binky says, you again? I guess so. The algorithm has brought me to you. MSOA says, where do you want to vacation to in 2026? I don't know. Maybe the Washington, D.C., considering it's the 250th anniversary soon for the country. The Tennessee says, what's the longest? Longest what? West says, look, it's the Unabomber. I do not look like Ted Kaczynski. Ford says, the perception of reality is more real than reality itself. The perception, my viewpoint, that's what's real. Interesting. The Tennessee says, the longest you've ever streamed, it was 8 hours something minutes. Jenny says, where have you been? I'm not gonna say what I do in my life. Riley says, he knew the name Ted off the top of his head. I did. I mean, he's a notable person in history, unfortunately. Musa says, make eye contact with the camera. I'm almost finished. Well, I do it anyways, so you're in luck. Civil Monkey says, anything? Yeah, you can tell or ask me anything. No promises, though, that I'll answer it. I will acknowledge it, though. C says, after this live stream experience, you are officially teacher. You're saying this stream is making me into kind of a teacher? Huh. Forward says, we are all born ignorant, but we must work hard to remain stupid. I'm confused. Chase says, the SAS is crazy. What? Beck says, what skill did you train to 99 on old school RuneScape? I never played RuneScape. I wish I did, though. Looks interesting. Spicy says, ignorance is bliss. Yeah. Sammy says, well, you are waving a pencil like you are trying to grade some kid's math homework. I understand your viewpoint. Civil Monkey says, what ratio of cement, sand, and aggregate do you need for a beam? I don't know. Can you tell me, please? Now I'm curious. That guy says, woo, red shirt today. Okay. Chunky says, I'm in Don Benitez's house, standing near the adjacent wall, showing him cue cards. You're not in my viewpoint showing me cue cards, no. Forward says, it's during our darkest moments that we must focus to see the light. Interesting. Daniel says, I have experienced dying. I did not see any light. And it was like I was going to another dimension. Like 2001: A Space Odyssey. That guy says, a little less energy, please. Funny. Chunky Sweat says, I told him to say that. No, you didn't. Niche says, what is the square root of 20? I don't think there is like a round, no decimal square root. I don't know. YT says, do you know P. Diddy massaged me? He gave you a massage. Okay. C says, what is the mood and the personality make you got to this point? Sorry. Blair says, hello Don, good to see you again. How's your evening going? Good, thank you for asking. Stargazer says, open the pod bay door, how? You're referencing 2001, okay. Forward says, an unexamined life is not worth living. You're dropping a lot of quotes and wisdom from history. YT says, can you make me an admin? I'm here for every stream. Give me 500 American dollars and I'll make you an admin. Sigma says, like a couple days ago, I was in your chat. You were cool. That guy says, can you recommend a non-fiction book? The Golden Bow. David says, what is more likely to exist, aliens or zombies? Aliens. Mr. Beatles says, dude, look behind you. Someone's standing right there with a rope. There's nobody there. Civil Monkey says, 99% goes unexamined. Nowadays, 80%. Huh. Chunky Sweat says, I have sent $500. It's the price all mods have to pay. No, I raised it up. It was $1 back in the day. Spicy says, falling asleep to these streams is kind of peak. You fall asleep to these streams? Cool. That Guy Called Him says The Golden Bow by James Fraser. Yes. C says, my life experience, I become more understand they're good people. I don't understand what you're saying, sorry. P says, definitely something behind you, dude. No, there isn't. Just a fan. Alumi says, are you more interested to find out what's in the depths of our oceans or space? Space. Spooky says, my name is Don Benitez, and my whereabouts cannot be accounted for on January 6, 2021. I was not a part of the storming of the White House. Joe says, Donnie B, sing me lullabies, please. No. Roasted says, your dad is standing behind you with a belt. Watch out. No, he's not. Mike says, you look like that chick from Black Phone 2. I haven't watched that movie. Stargazer says, your live chat is cool, Mr. Benitez. It is, thank you. C says, I think my comments is cut off. Your comments are hard to read. They don't have good grammar. YT says, please, Don, I don't have $500 to my name. Too bad. Jason says, when was your first gay experience? I haven't had one yet and don't plan to. Eric Stomp super chatted $5 American. Thank you, Eric Stomp. I really appreciate it. Now I'm gonna stream for 1 hour instead of just 30 minutes. Now it's 1 hour. Eric Stomp says, it's me, guys. I'm in the corner pointing a gun emoji at Don, so he keeps reading. You're not in my room, but you did make me continue reading in a way, because now I'm gonna read for a whole hour because of you, but it's not because you have a gun. Rodolfo says, long time no see. Hello, Rodolfo. I don't know who you are. Elumi says, are you going to cop the new Cardi and Kim Kardashian skins? In Fortnite? No. Niche GNA super chatted $2 American. Thank you, Niche. I appreciate the super chat. Also, thanks again, Stomp, for your super chat earlier. Quinn says, what your name, Don? Atlas says, why you so black? I'm not black. Mellum says, offhand name all the planets. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. That's what I can think of. KS says 3 whites of eyes. What? Eric Stomp says, who gave you a pencil? Myself. YT says, please, Don, make me adamant I got cancer. No. Spicy says, you forgot Yo Mama Planet. Cute. Chunky Sweats super chatted $2 American. Thank you, Chunky Sweats. Chunky Sweats says, Stomps and I are forcing Don to read my cue cards. You guys are not influencing me like that, no. But thank you for your super chat. I appreciate it, Chunky. The Tennessee says, what is your life goal? One of my goals is maybe I'll start a Minecraft server one day. Quinn says, how old are you? I'm not gonna say. Melly says, hello, Don Benitez. Hello, Mel. Hudson says, hey, do you remember me from last stream? Yeah, I do. YT says, I need to be admin or my life is not complete. Get a job and pay me $500 and your life will be complete. Joe says, how young are you, Don? 20? I'm not gonna say, but I am an adult. Koyo says, what do you think about Buddhism philosophy? I haven't read too much about that. Muggle says, I'm homeless. I watch from my car. That's intense. I hope things get better. Hudson says, see ya, Don. See ya, Hudson. Joe says, make me adamant, Don. I just found out I am gay. Give me $500. Eric Stomp says, I like the hair, Don. Thank you. Rodolfo says, guacamole with jalapeno, but the jalapeno has the spicy chip ingredient. So super spicy guac, you're saying? Niche says, what is your master's degree in? I'm not gonna say what my education is. Joe says, do you use pomade, Don? Pomade? No. C says, I'm 39 years old. I don't feel shy for my age. You don't feel shy being that old? Okay. Feather says, I'm trans. You're transgender? Okay. Diane says, cursive back in school. Are you asking me if cursive should be taught in schools? I don't know. I will say that I've forgotten to how to write it and read it. Kane says, no disrespect, but you remind me of Data off of Star Trek. The character Data. I haven't watched Star Trek. Rodolfo says, you look like an architect. Like someone who designs buildings. Okay. Shelby says, do you like tattoos? No, I don't. Alumni says, that sucks. Muggle chops, I'll pray for you. You're praying for Muggle because he lives in his car? Okay. Bodhi says, hi, fuckboy. Hello, Bodhi. Tay wave emoji says, how you been? Good, thanks, Tay. Hugh says, do you realize something? If the health department of Greene County sees those videos, they could condemn our house and we'd have to move out of it. Is that a Christian Weston Chandler reference? Alejandro says, hi, it's me, Alejandro. Do you remember me? I think 2 streams ago. No. YT says, Don, I have testicular cancer. I need to be adamant. Give me $500. Dat Burb says, what's your opinion on One Piece? I haven't watched any of it, but it doesn't seem appealing, considering how long it is. Cat Staffer says, this should not be amusing as it is. That's true. Joe To says, can you shout out my boy Don Benitez? Shout out myself? Yeah. Shout out Don Benitez. Muggle says, it's all good. I just eat when I have money, so I'm hungry a lot. And out of medication. That's quite horrible. I hope things get better. Niche says, would you please help me move a dismembered body? No. Hugh says, everyone else thought I was talking about them. You earned a like and sub. Okay. MSOA says, do you think USA and Venezuela will go to war? No. Chunky says, Don Benitez and I oil ourselves every week for the Hispanic Latino Daddy Bod Convention. That's not true. Eric Stomp says, Don, Data is a pale, yellow-skinned android AI, and you talk like him a little. Oh, okay. Droogs says, do you like hot dogs? Hot dog emoji. No, I don't. Growing Up says, hi, Mr. Easy. Hello, Growing Up. YT says, do you have a premium subscription to Jerkmate? No, I don't. Ilami says, do you watch any Twitch streamers? Not on Twitch, but I have seen a little bit of Asmongold. Naren says, hi, I like dogs. Cool, me too. Niche says, if I dig to the Earth's core, will it cause a volcano? I imagine so. Mira says, hello. Hello, Mira. Mr. Skelly says, bro, why are you holding a pencil? It's a prop. Muggle says he has an extra premium prescription. No, I'm not into Jerkmates. Jumper says, are you mad because you have herpes? I don't have that. David says, would you rather live forever and have an okay, modest life, or a life for the next 15 years and have an incredible life? 15 years, quality over quantity. Droog says, do you have Elder Scrolls? No, I don't. Muro says, I'm tired. Go to sleep. Narenda says, cats or dogs? Dogs. True says, you look like a Mike from Matan Evans videos. Mike? That's not the guy with the big eyes. That's someone different, right? William says, how to get all cheat in the game of the game and play it with the game. What are you saying? David says, would you rather someone call you sir or by your first name? My first name. Niche says, do you have a funny Christmas sweater? I don't. Kane says, do you ever break character? I laugh sometimes. And Mad says, changing up the shirt I see. Okay. Koyo says, I still don't have a reason, and you don't have the time, and it really makes me wonder. What are you saying? YT Wallen says, what's your favorite video game? Well, a video game that I have been playing recently is LSD Dream Emulator. Ray says, did you finally get some tail? No comment. Alejandro says, girl, but you said my name last stream. What? Kane says, I think you're a legend. Thank you. Koyo says, favorite GTA. I've only really played GTA 5, but I will say GTA 4 looks pretty interesting. Eric Stomp says, is that game in VR? I'm not sure. Not natively. Based says, nice ears. Can I have them? No. Niche says, are you a chemist? No, I am not a chemist. Diane says, what is the number for 911? What's the emergency phone number where I live? It's 911. Marissa says, do you play Clash Royale? No. If I did, though, I think I'd be using the Expo deck. Alumi says, Dawn is my shepherd, and I want to follow wherever he leads me, wherever he goes. Don't follow me. Ray says, I get ganged up on in GTA Online. Sorry. Guest Mark says, bruh, be skipping me. If you are typing vulgar stuff, sometimes YouTube censors it. I can't even see it. Jumper says, do you have Bitcoin? No, crypto doesn't interest me. Jeremy says, I'm getting a FNAF Bonnie the Bunny 8-inch. I don't know what you're saying, but it sounds gross. Kelly says, hello, Don. Hello, chat. Hello, Kelly. True says, what's your social security number? That's private. I'm not saying. Glenn says, show of hands, what year were you born? I'm not gonna say my birth year. YT says, do you have premium VR Jerkmate? No, I do not. Guest Mark says, all I said in chat was, what you getting for Christmas? Okay, that's not vulgar. What am I getting? I don't know. We'll see. Not much. SpongeBob says, want to know what my friend said in science today? Sure. Bade says, I'm queefing. Okay. Cinema says, have you seen Gremlins? I've seen that movie. William says, I dead eye the game and play it. What are you saying? David says, what's your least favorite holiday and why? I mean, why would I have a least favorite? How about Black Friday? I don't like Black Friday. Joe says, what's new, Jackie Chan? Hello, Joe. Callie says, hello, Chunky Sweats. You're saying hello to Chunky Sweats? Okay. Bade says, bro hates everything. No, I don't. Guest Mark says, this chat's cooked. I could see why you say that. I don't ban people, so it gets crazy. Koyo says, what does parasocial mean? I don't want to explain it. Just search up the definition. Alumi says, will you see the new 28 years later? I probably will. Eric Stomp says, hello, Callie. You're saying hi to Callie. Lots of community in the chat. That's cool. Cheese says, I thought Black Friday was a sale, not a holiday. That's a good point, but I think it's kind of like a semi-holiday. Jelani says, how's the progress towards becoming a full-time streamer going? I don't think that's gonna happen. I'm not anticipating that. The Biggest says, you fell off. I miss the old Daddy Don. How did I fall off? I'd be interested to know how I did. Callie says, nice pencil. Thank you. Niche says, you have the power. Okay. Gaming says, I lost my left toe to a bathtub drain. Be careful. Huh, okay. Koyo says, favorite movie genre? I guess drama. Ronaldo says, why are you reading the chat with a pencil? Because I think it makes things slightly more visually interesting. Spooky says, ever since you started streaming, you changed, Don. I miss the old you. Huh. I don't think I've changed. Ray says, you are Elliot Rodger. No, he's dead. Heather says, is it weird to sit at the top row in the movies when you're the only person there? Why would you sit in the top row? That's a bad spot. Don't. That is weird. Obsidian says, hello, Don. It's Soundwave, but I changed my name. What's up? Ojin says, he's zesty and sassy. I am. I don't think of myself in those terms. Ray says, you are AI. No, I'm not. Taro says, a gerbil is trapped in my boyfriend's butt. Okay. LS says, favorite book. I mean, this isn't really a book, but I really enjoyed the Sermon on the Mount in the Bible. Callie says, feels like we all your students and you're the teacher. I understand that perspective. Gaming says, you need to send the cat in. Does that mean to end the stream? Wakey Jakey says, this guy, ... Okay. Muggle says, at least you don't do tarot cards. I don't. That stuff seems superstitious, but I am interested in learning about it more one day. Gabby says, hey. Hello, Gabby. LS says, hobbies other than answering questions. I edit together videos. I video edit. I don't publish the videos, though. David says, would you ever do a documentary about yourself and your life if you could? No. Jeremy says, look, I'm sorry if I said something really weird. I don't care if you said something weird. Ellie says, you should listen to a band called Stray Kids. I'll get to that. People keep on recommending me that. I'll probably hate it, though, because it's K-pop. Quick says, your smile is waiting for the right lover. Huh, okay. Biggest Dipper says, I say knock knock. Who's there? Ronaldo says, also, do you know me when asked, can you turn on some music? Are you asking if I recognize you? No, I don't. Sorry. Valley says, that shirt must be pretty smelly. No, I wash my clothes. Heather says, is it weird to order food from the movies but not see a movie? That's insane, because the food is overpriced and bad, so why would you do that? Chunky Sweat says, Donatello Samantha Benitez, it's time for dinner. That's not my name. The Biggest Dipper says orange emoji. Okay. C says, you keeping yourself for marriage? I'm not gonna say. Callie says, Don, your hair has extra volume today. It has extra volume? Okay. Niche says, do you ever listen to the band Sleep? The band Sleep. No, I haven't. Msoa says oranges or apples. Oranges. A Westby says football or soccer. Soccer. The Scientist says, what do you think the meaning of life is? To survive and reproduce. Alumi says, what shade of pink is it? I don't have a vagina. Marissa says, are you religious? No, I'm not. The Scientist says, respect. You respect my meaning of life to survive and reproduce? Okay. Eric Stomp says, oranges or apples? What's that? Koyo says, do you collect Labubus? No, I don't. David says, if you could give someone advice right now and you could say whatever you wanted, what would you say? Nothing. I don't give advice. I don't like advice. Arn says, Mixkit, Ben Sound, Fezzle, San, Studios free. What are you saying? Yabba-dabba-doo super chatted $1 Canadian. Thank you, Yabba. I appreciate it. Rika says, you seem less angry / annoyed today. I do? Interesting. C says, because down here It says tell or ask me anything, but you don't say I will not reply personal questions. I mean, I acknowledge personal questions. That's worth something, right? Muggle says equally to 2 American cents. Are you talking to the Canadian dollar super chat? Valley says you could probably get a girlfriend if you changed your shirt sometimes. Okay. Rika says I love being acknowledged. You get a dopamine hit from that. Niche says you're pretty effing cool. I am? Okay. Diane says Ren or Stimpy. Are those cartoon characters? I haven't watched that cartoon show. Ray says no means yes. Yes means anal. What? Callie Greens super chatted 2 American dollars. Thank you, Callie. I appreciate it. Callie says, we all mad here. Crazy tongue out emoji, star emoji, green heart emoji, tongue out emoji. We're all mad. It can seem like that, definitely, if you read the chat. The chat's just filled with insane questions. Thank you, Callie, for your super chat. I appreciate it. A. West says, what's your favorite movie? Eyes Wide Shut. SS says, is having a foot fetish normal? No. Chunky says, Callie has donated $50,000 under the table. No, she hasn't. Arn says, Voldemort is my past, present, and future. That one cringe memory is my past, present, and future. What? Podcast says, who is this guy? My name is Don, and I stream myself reading messages. David says, do you have a least favorite movie? Godzilla versus King Kong. Marissa says, do you read the Bible? Not regularly. Koyo says, you have a Mercedes-Benz, right? No comment. Arn says, it's our choices, Harry, that show us what we truly are, far more than our abilities. You're quoting Harry Potter? Okay. Quick Feet says, why are you holding a random pencil? It's a prop. It's a theatricality. Guest Mark says, whoever is saying sus things, please stop. You don't like the sexual comments? Okay. SS says, do you have a pet ferret? No, I'm not a fan of pets. If I did get a pet, though, a ferret would be a candidate. Ray says, it's not a random pencil. It is number 2. It is a number 2 pencil. Tiny Mother says, what's your favorite movie line of all time? I think I have to go over there and show my face. Koyo says, when was the last time you took shit? No comment. David Plot says, do you have an opinion on AI? I think it's inevitable. We gotta get used to it. Rajat says, do you like to play Minecraft? Not really, but I used to. SF says, can you sharpen the pencil for the live? I don't want to, and I don't think I even have a pencil sharpener around me. Eric Stomp says, it is inevitable. You're agreeing with what I said? Okay. Quick says, is that pencil your emotional support animal? It's not, but that's an interesting theory. Callie Green says, do you chew on pencils? No, I don't. Nor on erasers. Chunky Sweat says Stomps has donated a handy under the table. No. Muggle says, are you a buzzkill? No. Third says, do you have a nice job? Well, I'm not gonna say. A West by says, what race are you? What race am I? Well, ethnicity, I'm Hispanic. Alumni says, a bullet for my Valentine or pierce the veil. What? Nash says, do you dye your hair? No, I don't. David says, do you think the existence of Bigfoot or a similar creature currently exists, like Mothman or the Loch Ness Monster? No, I don't think cryptids are real. Unknown says, are you from Canada? No, I'm not. Multi-subconscious says, my pillow still smells like dog. Your pillow smells bad? Okay. Callie Green says, who named you? Parents. Rule says, what games do you play? LSD Dream Emulator. Colonel says, bro is in Asian denial. Asian denial. I've never been told that. I'm denying that I'm Asian. The Rev Nation says, hair looks extra luscious tonight. I've been told that. Atlas says, you're such an Asian. I am? Okay. Eric Stomp says, what platform is that game on? I play it on PC, and I play LSD Dream Emulator revamped. I play a remastered version. It's called LSD Dream Emulator revamped. Multi-subconscious says, should I learn German or Japanese? German. M. Soa says, what hair products do you use? I use some kind of cream. I don't know what it's called. Curtis says, bro is not this nonchalant in real life. That's true. David Plott says, do you have a least favorite video game? Clash of Clans. Superhero says, remember Superhero from yesterday? No. Guest Mark says, your hair looks like Markiplier's. It does, okay. Chunky Sweat says, other than Mein Kampf, what is your favorite book? Well, I dislike Mein Kampf. Anyways, though, I like Wisdom of Life by Schopenhauer. Sour Blackberry says, laughing out loud. Okay. Augustine says, name a character for an edit. William Harford. Lost in a Room says, do you handle woman? What? Samantha says, are your incisors sharp? Can't you see for yourself? Callie Green says, is your timer gonna go off? Probably soon, yeah. Dat Burb says, I sold my little brother on eBay for $3. You did? That's horrible. A West By says, what's your favorite horror? My favorite piece of horror media? I don't know. The Ring. Lost in a Room says, will you stream daily again, or will you disappear? I plan on streaming daily. David Plott says, have you ever broken a bone? No, I haven't. Science says, can you see my comments? Yes, I can. The Rev Nation says, are you being held captive inside a cardboard box? No. Billy says, never quit even if you read bad comments. Bad comments are half of what I read. Richard says, he definitely a Lola Bunny kind of guy. I do not find cartoons sexually arousing. Science says, can you give more monologue? No, I like reading comments instead of me talking. Jeremy says, I was never a bad comment, and I'm not planning on being so. You don't think you give bad comments? Okay. Nash says, why are you gay? I'm not gay. Hill says, where are they shipping you? What? Ducky says, I like your hair. Okay emoji. Thumbs up emoji. Thank you. Tyler says, I am planning on being so. You're planning on being gay? Hugh says, have you seen Dexter's mom from Dexter's Laboratory, though? No. I'm guessing you're being perverted. David Plott says, do you have a least favorite person? Least favorite person? No, I don't. I don't think I hate anyone. Podcast Andy says, Don, what is your favorite animal? One of them is the orangutan. Tane says, Showdown in Little Tokyo. Showdown in Little Tokyo. Okay. Marissa says, people who play Clash of Clans are gay. I'm not a fan of Supercell games, considering the microtransactions. Billy says, you look like you're gonna cry. Okay. Guest Mark says, I sold my family for a 22-cent discount on GameStop. Okay. Rain says, are you gay yet? Not yet. Richard says, let's see that hog. You want to see my penis? No. Chunky Sweat says, other than Bill Cosby, what is your favorite celebrity? And why is it Dr. Disrespect? My favorite celebrity is not that predator, Dr. Disrespect. Ranchez says, microtransactions in games have been out of hand for a while. It's bad. Yeah, that's true. Zuli says, you are so calm. I am. Richard says, let's see the tennis. What? Callie says, good night, good night, good night. I'ma beat that bloody timer again. You're leaving before the stream ends? Bye, Callie. Thanks for your super chat again. Tyler Sullivan says, can I have one of your kidneys? No. Big Curtis says, when is the hog reveal? You would need to be my partner. Koyo says, are you getting Diddy tonight? No. Samantha says, what's your height? Use bananas for scale. How many bananas tall am I? I don't know, 15? Sour says, rip Justin because her was only 31. What are you saying? Callie says, bye, Brandon. You're saying bye to Brandon. Okay. Kitty says, why do you still come up on my feed? The algorithm. Chunky Sweat says, I'm Don Benitez's sexual partner. No, you're not. Gian says, haven't married yet? You are very cute, polite. I'm not gonna say. 2 a.m. says, what haircut do you have? I don't know the title this haircut would be. I don't know the name. Spooky says, I am Don Benitez, platonic partner. No. You're a parasocial friend, though. Samantha says, am I a furry if I like Zootopia? If you use Zootopia for sexual satisfaction, I think, yeah. David says, is there a haircut you would like to have but never have gotten it? I don't know. I will say that I'm interested in having longer hair. Chunky Sweat says, Nita is into you, Don. There's someone named Nita in the chat, and you think they're into me? Okay. Richard says, you got a teen-is or a hog? Are you saying, do I have a small or a large penis? I'm not gonna talk about that. Samantha says, do you use a vacuum to style your hair? My hair looks that chaotic that it might be styled by a vacuum. Okay. Gian says, Utopia, Nirvana is still money and prayers. What? Koyo says, do you like neuroscience? No. David Plott says, do you like fishing? Nope. But I think one day I'll give it a try. I am Celt says, hey Don, haven't seen you in a while. How are you? I'm good, Celt. Thanks for asking. Guest Mark says, you're fighting demons with this chat. No, I'm just fighting normal people. Jake Crawford says, thoughts on 9/11? I believe in the mainstream media story. Richard says, whip out that dong Don. Nope. Loreno says, does your flat personality style ever scare people? I don't think so. Chunky Sweat says, I am gooning to our furry convention recording from the other day. I haven't gone to a furry convention. Richard Gunn says, phones in the left hand, Don. Are you saying that you're masturbating? Okay. Koyo says, are you a member of the Navy SEALs? No, I'm not. Beeswax says, have you ever set fire to a church or a bus? No, I haven't. No Half Thing says, do you enjoy leveling up your Pokemon in the high grass? I am not into Pokemon. MSOA says, do you like Dragon Ball Z? No, but the character Frieza seems cool. Monkeys. Beeswax says, do you like fire? Yeah. Jeremy says, you got some weird comments, but it's pretty funny though. I'm glad that you enjoy this. Mojo says, I'm still waiting for you to get a real haircut. I would regularly get buzz cuts for like 2 years. Now I'm trying something different. Mr. Z says, can you share me the millions and millions of dollars you make from YouTube? I haven't even made $1,000 yet. Chunky Sweat says, Don Benitez facts. It's time to end the stream. Not exactly, but good prediction. Multi-Subconscious says, I made 6 modular origami icosahedrons and got $12. You made money from origami? Interesting. David Plott says, without saying what it is there a question or a statement someone could say on here that would cause you to lash out or end the stream early? Probably. Yeah. Atlas says, turn around, I'm almost finished. You want to see the back of my body, the back of my head? That's sexually arousing to you? That's pretty weird. Oh, because of my behind. Okay, I get it now. No, I'm not doing that. Beeswax says, have you ever thought about setting fire to a car? No. London says, what's up, dude? Hello, Londons. Richard says, I'm trying to see that ass. Yeah, like that one guy earlier. Heather says, my dad has a condition where every time a firework goes off, he farts. Ew. Msoa says, can you drive a stick shift? No, I can't. Gian says, why no coffee beside you? I'm not into coffee. I'm into water, though. I'm gonna end the stream. Also, I'm gonna be in the SalC1 Discord voice chat for a couple of minutes. So if you want to voice chat with me, I'll be in there. Again, it's the SalC1 Discord server. I'll be in the voice chat. I'm for like a couple of minutes. Bye.